Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and yeah, BTS album bomb, and it's Billboard BREAKDOwn. I don't remember. Okay, I'll be candid. While this isn't quite the worst case scenario when it comes to the album bombs expected, it is one that feels distinctly frustrating, albeit predictable. Of course, BTS is going to see major album impact for their comeback release, regardless of quality. But what caught me off guard was the lack of any real motion for Luke Combs beyond the promotional singles and some residual album motion. He's one of the biggest names in country right now, and this feels, well, kind of slight coming out of him, be it the fault of the label and management shuffling around or just having less traction than he had hoped. At least for me, it's dispiriting not to see some excellent songs from that album have a shot at charting instead of, well, y'all know. In fact, maybe you don't, but before we get fully into all that, our top 10, we're going right to number 1, Swim by BTS. Would you guess that it's driven off of a massive influx of sales playing the multiple version remix game alongside album bomb streaming? It's almost as if 2021 never left us. Now, to BTS's credit, they actually have considerably more radio than they did back when they and the army were playing the chart games that made us just the best of friends. But it is radio now accepting BTS and individual members as expected and accepted brand names and commodities. So it's not all that surprising they got this much momentum, even if I would not put money on it lasting. More on that in a bit, but it's mostly because of Choosing Texas by Langley at number 2, which is still dominant on streaming with stable radio and actually right behind BTS on sales. This was a margins game all the way down, and given the buzz around Arirang, well, it wouldn't surprise me if this retakes the number 1 next week. And this places Man I Need by Olivia Dean in a tough spot at number 3. It's completely stable, across the board, which is promising if she wants to make the move, but the radio is softening, and I don't think she's got that added boost to take true advantage of the losses that could be above her. And truthfully, I'm not sure I Just Might by Bruno Mars has the juice to do it either at number 4. It rules radio, but the gains are softening and the streaming is ebbing back. I don't see another run in this song's future, and honestly, I'm largely okay with that. I also don't see it for Ordinary by Alex Warren at number 5. We can drop this song anytime, folks. And while the streaming is steadily falling back, the radio is way more stable than it has any right to be. I blame Adult Alternative. And yet it still's got more than Golden from K-Pop Demon Hunters at number 6, which saw credible losses on streaming, but because more songs faded above it on the radio, it mostly held up. But I'm happy to say it's going to get overtaken soon by So Easy to Fall in Love by Olivia Dean up to number 7. Yeah, streaming is not exceptional, and I'd argue it's taking advantage of weaker songs above it on the radio, but there's real traction, and that might just be enough with the right path. Now, a big part of this are the losses for Stateside by Pink Pantheress and Zara Larsson at number 8. Look, I thought it was the worst song on Fancy That. I did give it another chance, and importing a bunch of bad, oily electro-pop ideas from the late 2000s for a leaden remix has not made it better for me, but it was always going to be vulnerable to streaming fluctuations with limited radio, and even if it's seen some growth in that channel, it might be too little too late. It still held over The Fate of Ophelia at number 9 by Taylor Swift, not surprising as it's losing consistently across the board. And then to round things out, much to my pleasant surprise, Folded by Kalani crept back into the top 10 because out of nowhere they had a great week on the radio, and that was just enough to hold over losses that happened around them. Good stuff, not complaining. But that naturally takes us to our losers and dropouts, where in the latter group, as expected, we saw the majority of Harry Styles' losses, but also a whole slew of songs that will just never really catch fire. I'm not going to complain that It Depends by Chris Brown featuring Bryson Tiller is finally gone, but both Four Raws by SD Kid and I Thought I Saw Your Face Today by She and Him, they are going to fall well short of any year-end list for 2026. Just not enough traction to properly take hold. And when we get to our losers, well, while we got some album bomb turnover, it was not overpowering. The fades are having a longer fuse these days. Let's start off with Harry Styles, because Aperture continued down to 39, as did Coming Up Roses at 64, Taste Back at 69, Ready Steady Go at 70, and Pop at 97. But we might as well mention the Don Toliver album bomb that just refuses to die, like Secondhand with Rima at 92 and ATM at 93. Then we get the gains from last week getting muscled back, like Midnight Sun by Zara Larsson back to 49, and Watching Us by Wale and Leon Thomas back down to 86. And while we're here, the new arrivals that aren't seeing a lot of traction, like Porch Light by Noah Kahan at 42, it's probably going to rebound, The Visitor by Sienna Spiro at 62, and Dry Spell by Casey Musgraves at 90. Frankly, I'm shocked that survived even a second week. The rest, I Ain't Coming Back by Morgan Wallen and Post Malone might finally be about done at 66. Beautiful Things by Megan Maroney faded to 72, as did Say Why by Zach Bryan. That really should have been a radio hit. Seems like Canada is at least trying to make that right. And Butterflies by Brent Faiyaz is clinging on to 99. Now the returns and gains, as expected, fairly muted this week, with the only return being What You Need by Thames scraping back at 98, with the only 3 gains coming in country, and the only one of them feeling remotely justifiable is Days Like These by Luke Combs getting some of the album boost to 31. The others, okay, come the hell on. Who the hell wants Change My Mind by Riley Green up to 38? Or Don't We by Morgan Wallen up to 88? Okay, I know that's a rhetorical question because Nashville radio is behind them both, but it doesn't make them suck any less. But in a slice of good news, at least for my workload, BTS is very much in large album bomb territory with more than 12 songs debuting this week. So I'm only going to be talking about the best, worst, or those in the top 20, of which there's only one in the top 20, lucky me. The rest, where I would highly recommend you check out the song credits if you want to have a clear idea of who BTS was nakedly cribbing ideas from and adding so little unique on top of it. Into the Sun at 68, Please at 63, one of the late album highlights, and not just because it capitalizes on more romance and melody. One More Night at 61, They Don't Know About Us at 56, Like Animals at 53, Merry-Go-Round at 52, not a Casey Musgraves cover, but probably the best song on the album, if only because it encapsulates how much BTS sounds like they do not want to be making this album, and the workload is just so goddamn exhausting. 2.0 at 50, probably the best of the bangers, produced by Mike Will Made It. That's really not saying much. Normal at 41, Fire at 36, and Body to Body at 25. Now that thankfully makes this week way more manageable for a change. But let's start off with a more reasonable list of new arrivals with a bit of a real curveball. Number 91, Freakin' Out by Dexter and the Moonrocks.
Gotta take it so far. Excuse me, I'm out of rhythm. Taking pills and sleeping in a car.
I'm not sure to where to even start with this one. Dexter and the Moonrocks are a bit of a weird animal to describe. A Texas country rock outfit that have been steadily dropping EPs for the past 5 years. They got signed to Big Loud, and who have been described as their genre as Western space grunge. Okay, as someone who happens to think that space-themed music and country are not bad taste together, beyond just casualty as cool, there are a few scattered deep cuts that I've reviewed over the course of the past decade plus that try this out, and they kind of kick ass. I still don't have the highest of hopes. I was expecting this probably going to be like closer to Treaty Oak Revival than something with more texture or personality, and sadly we don't get much of either here. This initially felt way more reminiscent of the haunted grunge-adjacent ballads that we got in the mid-90s with some smoky tremolo riffs, which at least had some promising atmosphere, before all the crunchy post-grunge riffs dropped in and this began feeling like the stock songs, where the bass lines are formless and the production is compressed for rock radio, and the frontman's voice just does not have a lot of character. Now, I think the angst in the writing is pretty credible. The song feels like it's trying to work through a panic attack where life is spiraling out of control due to drugs and poverty and loneliness, and that honestly kind of had me. I wish they doubled down on the murkier atmosphere instead of going for a lot of the very stock obvious hooks that neuters all of that atmosphere, but that would also probably make this a far less approachable song. Probably far more interesting. I get why some might be excited for an actual rock track to make this return, but this sounds just okay to me, at best. Number 90, Go Away by Weezer.
Go away, go away, go away, go away, go away. Don't come back here anymore. Go away.
Okay, I don't even know what to say at this point. Seeing a song go viral from the last very good to great Weezer album with Everything Will Be Alright in the End, yes, I stand by that. The White Album and OK Human, they didn't hold up at the time and they sure as hell don't now. Well, it's legit surprising, and I'm also not about to complain. And this is a weird animal to talk about even from that album, featuring Bethany Cosentino of Best Coast charting on the Hot 100 for the first time, and she's not credited. When I reviewed the album, I kind of sketched a parallel to Pinkerton, another Weezer project that's aged weirdly in hindsight. And while I don't remember this as an explicit highlight on the album, going back to it now, I hear what I liked. The thick, fuzzy riffs that provide a good foundation for the keening lead, Rivers Cuomo sounding abjectly pathetic, as per usual, and Cosentino absolutely not tolerating that bullshit. One of the reasons I like this album is that it did a lot to puncture the awkward adorkableness and that wish fulfillment of Weezer with a punch of reality, especially when it's implied that Rivers Cuomo cheated on this girl and he paints her as cold-hearted and not wanting to listen, and you can tell for her this is the last straw. She doesn't have to give him another chance. He blew that chance. It's on him. And I'm with that. I now wish Weezer had continued that attempted arc towards maturity, but the last decade proved that was a lost cause. But this is still good. If a Weezer song has to go viral, I don't mind it's this one. Number 82, Can't Sit Still by Lainey Wilson. I'm conflicted on Lainey Wilson at the moment, not because she's made bad music so much as that the breakthrough success that she had a shot to have has been thoroughly usurped by Ella Langley and Megan Maroney. I think she should be in that group. Of course, there are other factors, like her being on Broken Bow, which tended to have dubious relationship with the majors and Music Row, or Jay Joyce as a producer having the definition of a mixed blessing. Then there's this new song, which has me frustrated because there's a ton to like here. Yeah, the hazy overdubs, they're not great, and the attempt at a clunkier funk-adjacent bass line for the second verse, it doesn't match anything else in the song. That's a Jay Joyce choice that he should be long over by 2026. But between the faster tempo, the shuffling groove that picks up some booming presence to accentuate the scale of the track, the excellent balance between burnished acoustic and electric guitars, and the vocal harmonies on the bridge, Lainey Wilson does a good job capturing the desire to not settle down when she'd rather dance or run a little wild. Is it a familiar formula to both her and her peers? Absolutely. Wildflowers and Wild Horses is not that old, but if there's something that gives this a little bit more anxious potency, it's the reality that Lainey Wilson knows this sort of inclination can be as much of a curse as it is a seductive blessing, and it feels like the weight of it is a little bit more personal. So yeah, I absolutely dig this song. She's got enough tracks that she should be in an upper tier of women in country breaking through, so I hope this catches on. Number 55, Love and Life Again by Ella Langley.
Find some peace in the back of my mind, in between the piles where I'm jumping on that quarter horse, and then just like that I'm back to loving life again.
And now for the other side of the coin. So much as I really like choosing Texas, I got the uneasy feeling that Dandelion is not going to hit quite as strongly as I would hope in order to follow up on it. Not that the songs are bad, so much as they're missing that slam dunk great track amidst the tide of decent to pretty good. And with this, yeah, I'm putting in that territory too. I like the warmer and heavier acoustic guitar alongside the misty pedal steel and gentle groove. It gives me traces of the spacious dream country I loved in the late 2010s. And I kinda like the keening blend of electric guitar and mandolin on the bridge. But I hear two problems here. The first is that kick drum. It's not that it doesn't keep a good rhythm, but it drives the momentum in the hook into an utter wall, and even if that's intentional in order to accentuate the slowdown that Ella Langley's trying to experience, the arc of the song feels kind of frustratingly basic in just getting caught up in her own head and then getting out of it with "There's no place like home." Not precisely bad, but it feels kind of simplistic in a way that a good Ella Langley song shouldn't be, and just kind of takes me out of it. Again, it's certainly decent, but I'm still waiting on great. Number 46, Aliens by BTS.
If you wanna hit my house, you better miss a line, yeah, we aliens. 어쩜 그래 shameless. Yeah, it'll try to re-aliens. 해는 동쪽에서 rising. Aliens, aliens.
Let's not mince words. Arirang is probably the worst BTS album that I have heard, but for a distinct and deeply depressing reason, the pop group reunion album. You know the type, when the group members, they did their solo projects and some of them hit, and there's this weird obligatory feeling to get back in the studio together, do something, mostly to save the members who did not stick the landing, and you're tasked with both keeping up with where the mainstream sound is now, alongside a lot of your own artistic evolution that you've done solo. And more often than not, you wind up outside of your comfort zone and kind of embarrassing yourselves. For BTS, this comes through the baffling choice to double down on Western hip-hop touches in 2026, which has never been their strong suit, predominantly off a bunch of braggadocious tracks that front-load the album, and they might be among some of the worst things that this band has ever done. I have long hated BTS bragging at me and trying to say that we're so envious of them. Given how miserable it sounded to make this album, I'll gently push back on that. Didn't sound fun. But if you translate the lyrics, this song is doubling down on them being aliens to the rest of the world that deserve respect, alongside of a lot of distinctly Korean references that feel like an exoticism they don't have to push now. You had #1 hits before in America. Why frame yourselves like this? But the larger problem is that the production doesn't remotely match this, because Mike Will Made It has given them a lumbering, oily mess full of spare squawks where none of the vocal fidelities remotely match within the band, where J-Hope's auto-tuned nasal pre-chorus is fighting with Jungkook shouting through some truly atrocious compression on the post-chorus, and Jimin is trying to desperately add some tune to the hook where there is none. It wasn't the first moment that convinced me that this album was awful, but it did tell me it was not worth my time to review. We're all the better for it. Pass. Number 46, Rethink Some Things by Luke Combs.
Kinda makes a made of my stop questioning everything you wanted. Girl, you're gonna make it hard to leave. You're the kind of woman make a married something.
And now I'm just exasperated that if we had to get one Luke Combs song to chart, it could have been 15 Minutes or Daytona 499. Unfortunately, this is Luke Combs in some semi-sleazy territory. Like with Riley Green, the worst possible lane for him. His natural husky earnestness is such a poor fit for this content, where he's looking at some girl that's so hot yet so erratic that she's having him rethinks his choices, even though all this is a plainly bad idea and he knows it, but she's just that hot. And look, I've met people like that. I get the impetus. But the arc of rethinking your good decisions in order to make bad ones, that's a pretty high bar to pull off in melodrama, and this isn't it. And not for nothing, the vibe of the song doesn't flatter him at all. He's just not loose enough to play this sort of country funk. The production dodges any J. Joyce clunkiness with one of the better light bass lines on the album, with touches of organ and a tighter guitar rollick. I'm sorry, there's not enough atmosphere to really suck me in, especially when I recently had Sturgill Simpson's excellent Johnny Blue Skies project, Mutiny After Midnight, that nails this brand of horny sleaze way more effectively. In a different week, this would be a bottom tier song. However, number 35, Hooligan by BTS. Watch this beat going Hooligan. When the album dropped, I saw a lot of people across social media cross-posting the lyrics and openly mocking them. 5 years ago, the army would have doxed them for such an insult, but but at this point I genuinely feel bad for anyone trying to defend this shit. There was something in the first few seconds in that elegant melody I thought had some potential, and then with the sound of scraping knives, producer El Guincho chops it into bassy ribbons where said low end is clipping the mix as they try to sound hard, and it doesn't remotely work at all, especially when Jungkook is trying to croon through a hook about being a hooligan, and with lines like, why this bass line slapping so rude, drop it lower than chopped and screwed. For as much as J-Hope and RM are trying to sound menacing, it just doesn't work when you're using rap slang so clumsily with a falsetto hook that almost sounds delicate, especially trying to accentuate a beat that doesn't have the tempo or flair to accentuate any sort of criminal delinquency. I just don't buy it. It has the feel of prep school kids who want to be hard and they just don't sell it well, especially when the lyrics are so painfully vapid and undercooked. When I heard this song, my first thoughts were, yeah, pack it up. BTS is done. I'll only pay attention to the R&B adjacent material from RM and V, maybe something weird from J-Hope on occasion. This sounds like nobody knew nor liked what they were doing, and you want to know why I kind of believe that? Number 1, Swim by BTS.
Swim. I could spend a lifetime watching you swim. This is how it all begins. Swim. I just wanna dive.
I mean, really? This is what BTS sent to number 1? I might not like a lot of their big crossover hits, but I can defend Life Goes On or Boy With Love, or even My Universe with Coldplay or Butter, and I can't remotely defend this. Credit to them, they were trying something different. It's all in English. They tried to embrace something of a nautical theme with the love song and some of the music video, trying to find something precious amidst the currents in this love story. But it's awfully low-key by their standards as Jungkook and Jimin take the hook. But my god, what is that oily mess of a synth before we get the bleeping, half off-key staccato keyboard line alongside the faster trap percussion as the bass comes in, where it's trying to keep a faster tempo than any of the actual melodic shifts, where it all just sounds goopy and weirdly dreary. For a band that's known for these big flashy pop hooks, this is about the last thing they need, where I shouldn't be thinking about dated and bleak trap pop of the mid to late 2010s when it comes to BTS. They used to go way harder. It's the sort of song that could be given to anyone and would be thoroughly considered mediocre, and when you realize it's coming out of Ryan Tedder's collective of songwriters alongside one who worked on Joji's recent album, yeah, that sadly explains way too much. It's not the worst thing on the album. You already heard me talk about those. But man, I'd have no issue with this leaving. And fast. Even BTS fans, I don't think you can defend this. But that's the week. I'm not surprised BTS is getting the bottom slots for me, with Hooligan as the worst of the week and Aliens as a dishonorable mention. But the best, you know, I was tempted to give it to Weezer and Bethany Cosentino for Go Away, but Can't Sit Still by Lainey Wilson really did sneak up on me. I really dug that song. But next week, well, we'll see if any of this sticks around. We'll stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. And I'll see you